Hello and welcome back to the channel. With the release of Season 2, Episode 1 of House of the Dragon, we finally got a look at the long-awaited blood and cheese, which is certainly one of the more shocking things we see in the Dance of Dragons. However, how accurate is this in comparison to the events that occur in Fire and Blood? So first up, the Fire and Blood version of Blood and Cheese. Now this does differ from the show in a couple of key aspects, and I'll explain those before kind of going over the overall story. The first big difference is this doesn't happen in Maegor's Holdfast, it instead happens in the Tower of the Hand. There are several reasons for this, the first of which being that Cheese doesn't know a way into Maegor's Holdfast, save the main door, obviously. And the Tower of the Hand is significantly less secure, and you may be wondering, Bale, well, why they're going to the Tower of the Hand at all, because surely Helena and the children, or Aemond, aren't going to be there. And the reason given is because Alicent actually lives in the Tower of the Hand, and every evening Helena would bring her children there, as a kind of, nice kind of bonding thing between, mum and grandma. I imagine on this occasion she regretted it, but that's why they were in the Tower of the Hand. Also in Fire and Blood, you've got an additional son. They didn't exist, or they didn't include Maelor in House of the Dragon. Don't exactly remember why. I believe Ryan Condal said something along the lines of it didn't make sense with the timelines, which, again, I kind of respect, if you're going to make your timeline one way and then all of a sudden chuck another character in just because it has to make sense. I respect the fact that they're kind of, they've set that, they've dug their grave, they're going to lie in it. However, it does fundamentally change how Blood and Cheese takes place. But anyway, I'll go into explaining Blood and Cheese. So, basically, Blood and Cheese break into the Tower of the Hand instead of Maegor's Holdfast and bound and gag Alicent, killing her bedmaid. They then wait for Helena to turn up and kill her guards the second she arrives, then put a knife to her throat and force her to choose a son to kill. Helena obviously pleads for her own life. However, they say, no, a son for a son. She points at her youngest, Maelor, in the kind of hopes that he's young, he won't remember. However, they then turn to Maelor, say, your mama wants you dead, and then cut off Jaehaerys' head and escape with Jaehaerys' head, obviously leaving Maelor scarred because he thinks his mum wanted to kill him, and Helena is just absolutely distraught. But that does differ a lot from the show. Now, again, what happened in the show? So the show, essentially what happened is they were told by Daemon Targaryen to kill Aemond. Again, in Fire and Blood, it is never actually described who their targeted is, and I think it's deliberate. It's left deliberately vague, and it's suggested that could have been Aegon, but again, they couldn't get at Aegon because he was so thoroughly guarded. However, again, in the show, they broke in, tried to find Aemond, didn't really try very hard, and then when they couldn't find Aemond, they found Helena, put a knife to her throat, said, which one's the boy? And when she eventually pointed to the boy, they cut off the head of Jaehaerys. Helena then escapes, goes into her mother's bedchamber, finds her doing the nasty with Kristen Cole, and then just go, they killed the boy. And then cut to credits. That's the first episode of House of the Dragon Season 2. So that does differ a fair bit. But why does it differ? Now, I think a couple of fans, or a section of the fandom after watching this episode, from what I've heard, got kind of defensive and was like, oh, well, this is stupid because in the book it's so much better and it's so much different, it's so much more tragic. But I think that's kind of the point, and I'll explain as to why. So Fire and Blood is not a single told story narrative. It's a complex, different kind of battling of points of views of interpretation of historical events. Much like your modern day history book. If you read a history book that's written by the English, it tends to kind of favor the English. You're not going to get an unbiased narrative from Fire and Blood. That's the whole point. So I am of the opinion, and I guess it does slightly differ again with the exclusion of Maelor as well, but I am of the opinion that the real Blood and Cheese was probably more closely depicted in the show than it is recorded in Fire and Blood, and I think the main reason is that the main histories of Fire and Blood, they're accounted by a maester. And obviously, for those that don't know, the maesters live in Old Town, which the Liege Lords of Old Town are the High Towers. And it's always been heavily suggested that the High Towers and the maesters are very close, and it would make sense that the maester will be biased towards Team Green's perspective. Now, obviously, this does not change the fact that Team Black indirectly caused the death, or directly caused the death of a child. However, it does severely differ from how the book depicts it, because obviously in the book, Alicent's, she's out of the question. She's been bound and gagged with her handmaid killed, so Alicent couldn't have done anything wrong, right? And then they break in, they force the queen to choose, and then they put the queen through this ordeal, and they brutally make a mother choose to kill one of her children, then kill the other child, then hack off his head. It's all so traumatic, but it's meant to be that way, because it's, again, is trying to make Team Black look worse. That's how I interpret it. And again, I'm not by any means saying that Team Black is great after murdering a child, but I think the way it is in Fire and Blood, it's deliberately different because it is trying to paint Rhaenyra in a worse light. And the majority of Fire and Blood is written to put Rhaenyra in a worse light, primarily, again, because it's written from the source of a maester. And that makes sense to me. And that's kind of why I'm not necessarily mad at how Fire and Blood differs from House of the Dragon, because I believe it is a more kind of accurate depiction in the sense that it doesn't have this kind of overarching sense of tragedy, and it also adds another light onto it that it does happen in Maegor's Holdfast. It would make sense again for the Maester to say, oh yeah, it happened in this less secure place, not the really, really ridiculously notoriously secure Maegor's Holdfast. It could never happen there. That's another factor that plays into that, and also the bounding and gagging of Alicent. Alicent could never, you could never entertain these rumours that Alicent was sleeping with Sir Criston Cole. She was, again, bound and gagged in the Tower of the Hand, so impossible. It adds alibis, it adds in excuses for several things that went on in Blood and Cheese in the show, and the book kind of makes it sound like no, it was all tragic and it was all Team Black, whereas I believe in the show there are several lapses of judgments on Team Green's part that made Blood and Cheese happen easier, of course. And I know anyone that is kind of Team Green, I don't want you now having a go at me saying, oh well, you're clearly heavily biased towards Team Black, you're saying that, you know, it's all their fault. It's never, by no means their fault. I just believe that the accounting of Fire and Blood is made to paint them in less of a bad light and make them less kind of liable for why Blood and Cheese happened, when in reality in the show they should never have been able to go into the Queen's room, hold her at knife point without meeting like several Kingsguard. And there are a couple of theories on the show that Alicent and Criston deliberately removed the Kingsguard from that so they didn't hear them having their affair. Well, that indirectly caused Blood and Cheese. However, that is again just a theory. But Criston, I believe, was supposed to be on duty, so again, it covers kind of two key players of the Dance of the Dragon's hides in the events in Fire and Blood, and that's kind of my whole opinion on it. By all means, if you think I'm wrong, if you disagree with me, do let me know in the comments, because again, this is very, very heavily opinionated. But yeah, that's kind of my kind of the real Blood and Cheese, as it were, and why I think they do differ, and why I think that's actually great. Not necessarily a massive problem that they didn't depict it exactly as it's told in the books. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I have been Grandmaster Bell. That has been the real Blood and Cheese. Let me know if you want to see more of these kind of lore-style videos, as I do really enjoy making them. And again, if you disagree with me, do let me know in the comments. I am by no means trying to say that my opinion is the be-all, end-all fact of why these two events differ. If you think it differs and it's dumb, let me know. I want to hear it. And if you think any of my theories are wrong, by all means, voice your opinions in the comments. I'd love to hear them. But yeah, I have been Grandmaster Bell. That's been the real Blood and Cheese, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.